Welcome to Between the Lines, a podcast hosted by former world number one Danny Massaro and performance coach Ahad Reza.
We break down what's really happening in high-level squash across the technical, tactical, physical and mental realms and help you translate it into action.
You will hear match analysis, guided insights, coaching demonstrations and conversations with some of the best minds in sport.
But this isn't just about the theory. It's about growing a community of curious players and coaches dedicated to unlocking their potential together.
So if you're ready to train smarter, think deeper, and play better, join us Between the Lines.
Danny, here's why you need to listen in closely. Danny has a Doctor of Philosophy. He has been an academic lecturer since 2007 at the University of Central Lancashire. He is a squash coach, and he has been so since the year 2000. He has coached many professional level players. He has coached 5 national junior champions and others who represented England. He has been coach to his wife, obviously, Danny Massaro, who's former world number one, world champion, and 2 times British Open champion. Danny has also been a mental coach since the year 2005 to over 30 professional squash players, including folks like Nick Matthew, Olivia Weaver, Hania Al-Hamami, Marwan Shorbagy, Joel King, Salma Hani, Mohammad Al-Shorbagy, and many, many more. Danny is also a published author 2 times over. His first book is titled The Winning Parent, a guide for parents and coaches through the competitive journey of junior sport. His other most recent book is titled Being Well, which is a journey into the heart of living well through sport. Additionally, Danny is also a master practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming ever since 2005. But Danny isn't only an academic. He played semi-professional squash for 18 years in the Northwest England Division 1, where he regularly competed against top professional players. He's also made the final of the British over 35 and 2 finals in the over 40 age group championships. Last but not least, if you want to hear a lot about Danny's philosophy, his approach, and really neat and interesting ideas, check out his podcast titled Talk Doesn't Cook Rice.
So, Danny, do you think you could just explain to anyone listening, obviously I know your journey in squash, how you found yourself transitioning from that kind of, squash player into a really good amateur, semi-professional to a degree, and then how your qualifications kind of went through to working with some of the world's best players on the mental side?
Yeah, well, I always played as a kid, left the game alone for 5, 6, 7 years or so, and then I picked it back up, got really keen into it. At the same time, I was teaching loads of sports psychology modules and sports coaching and so on at the college where I worked. That was something I just repeated, and then all blended together, got really fit, started playing squash again, and met you. Did all my NLP qualifications, in psychology, which we'll get into later. And that was it. I met loads of great squash coaches by knowing you and local area as well. And that was it. I just went off on a mission. So as a player, I just played probably till about 2 years ago. And then as a coach, it just went on and on and on. And with the qualifications and all the teaching of psychology, all the reading, all the helping of different sports and all of that, it just naturally fell into squash. And it kind of just randomly grew up. I think when you retired from playing, it went on another level again. I felt like I got more sophisticated in a way as a psychologist then. Did my PhD, which was all about psychology and philosophy. And since then, yeah, lots like since 2017, 18, just gone.
Well, that qualification in itself is huge. The PhD, they take years and years. I know it took years and years. The books, the podcast, the reading, the hours and hours in the library. Just talk us through those qualifications to even get the PhD. That's now, I can see, giving you so much in terms of how you work with those players, from mainly that PhD qualification that's kind of underpinned by all the stuff you've just talked about.
Yeah, well, like the NLP, for people that know it, it's all about the reprogramming the brain, you belief processes, life changing, all these things, imagery, So I did that for 2.5 years. I started doing a lot of staff training, working with all the staff in the college and helping individuals and teams, which was tricky, but a real grounding of how to work with people. I think being a teacher and using all the psychology with them, that was good. But then obviously working at university, doing all the modules there, we had a course called Elite Coaching Practice, where we had 7 sports all around England. All the best people and coaches used to come, and ex-players. So I've had sort of 12 years teaching those courses on weekends: gymnastics, hockey, rugby, cricket, whatever, loads more sports, fighting, MMA stuff now. And you're working with these coaches, doing dissertations with them, helping them through listening to the stories and experiences. So it's just learned so much off them. And then that led into my PhD when you stopped playing, and I had all these notes and things I'd written down. And I wanted to sort of understand deeper into what it is to be a human being and a sports athlete. So that took me into existential psychology, philosophy, phenomenology, all these trendy words. But yeah, I got my PhD, and yeah, I've definitely put the work in. I had this sort of passion, I've never shied away from complexity, really. I've never been someone who's feared things being complex and amazing and wonderful and many perspectives to something.
I have a
So
question
obviously,
about complexity, though.
yeah.
Well, with the two of you being husband and wife, there must have been some complexity around navigating partner responsibilities, coaching, delivering effective feedback. How did you manage that side of things?
Well, I think when you love somebody,
Yeah.
it's easy, isn't it?
I like that. Laura, was it as easy for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've always been asked, we've always been asked a lot about how it is dealing with the husband and wife. And I think I would definitely say Danny is far wiser than I am. He's always been really wise. Even when we go back before he even started working with on the, when he started really working on that mental side, I think even his own family say that, like, with, we won't go into it too much, but the way that his upbringing was in his childhood, he basically lived on his own from 17 years of age, which is almost like unheard of now. And, kind of walk the walk and did it. And you are very much of that way. It's like the life that we're living, and we're on that path, and we'll go with it. And so I've always found that it's been quite easy working together as a husband and wife. There's definitely been times, hasn't there, Danny, where I've said to you, do you think we talk squash too much? Like when I was playing particularly, do you think we talk squash too much? Do you think that we should have something else that we do? And again, Danny being wise, Danny's always just said, well, when we get to that next phase in our life, that's when we'll have, other things. It's sort of important not to kind of be able to go, oh, we're not going to talk about squash after 5 p.m. because that wasn't what we were trying to do together. We were very much on the same page, I would say, going after a goal together. And that's what made that relationship quite simple, I think. Would you sort of agree with that?
Yeah, I think what there was, and it was probably the reason we got together, was just massive respect. I think it's the same with any relationship, isn't it? Like if you don't play a role, but you respect each other as people,
yep,
and then you value the differences, and yeah, you annoy each other, and you trip each other up, and you wish that they won't do things at certain times. But the good thing that they have can also be the sort of bad thing that they have that annoys you. But
yeah,
but then you cash in on the good thing a lot, and vice versa. And Laura's always like, she's never been frustrated or annoyed by me. She's always like given me confidence because she's accepted me completely who I am. And I think that's what would do for Laura. But the phases element is really important. And this is like when I work with players as well. You're always moving through phases in your life. And it's very important. You can only live in the one you're in, but it's very important to sort of be in that phase and not try and rush out of it too much. And so, accept that that you can't be wise beyond your years necessarily. You don't want to miss that phase. I mean, I think when you do go through phases, say you get older, then act accordingly. Be a bit older. Don't try and still be 20.
Right.
When you're in your 20s, don't try and make someone in their 30s or 40. Don't try. So this is what you have to do with players. You're always working out not only the personality type, but you're working out also their phase that they're in and going through. And I just think, I don't know, maybe I did have a little bit of appreciation of that. But yeah, you look back sometimes and you cringe. You think, oh, I used to say that, and oh my God, what mistakes. But you're supposed to be making your mistakes, aren't you? You're supposed to be too intense, too cheesy, whatever. But I think with Laura, the underpinning thing was it was like a, a it was like a couple, I don't know, starting a business together.
Mm.
It always felt we were in it together. And Laura obviously had the talent. I never hit one squash shot, but I had the drive, I had the visions, I was directing the people we were working with. I was wondering when to pick my battles. We obviously get it wrong a lot, but you get it right a lot. There's a lot, there was a story where Laura went to Australia one time and she played poorly, in my opinion, against the player. And I just remember sending her an email and said, I love you, but that's not good enough. Boom, boom, boom. What we doing? Because we could be doing something else. Why are we doing this?
Mm.
So I think, as well as me being quite open-minded and thinking of things, I think that in my nature as well, I'm very pragmatic. Hence, talk doesn't cook rice.
Right.
So I want to move on fast. In terms of, well, is this making the boat go faster? Yes, no. You've been practicing drop shots for 3 months. It hasn't worked. What we doing? Move coach. Yeah, you worry, still getting nervous about a match. Fine, either do this or go and see someone else. So we always have all these. We always try to surround ourselves with the best people as well, and it was the best people that almost like also helped us stay together because they would always chip in with, aren't you both doing a good job together?
Right.
Now, that made you quite well respected, but it didn't necessarily make you popular because people looked at you from the outside and they were like, ugh, they're intense. They're on a mission.
Right.
They look serious. Obviously, we're not on the inside.
Right.
We're having a great time, but to others, possibly because you're a threat. Like I might do it now with Orphe and her father. You might do it with, like, you see it with certain, Goa was like that, a bit with the Momo, but Mohammed could be a bit distant sometimes with his, crew. And people, they don't like it, So you might not be the most popular, but you definitely earn respect. And I think that what it was always around. It was never about being popular between us. It was about respect, moving on, building it up. So that later in life, we could get to our agreed goals that we had. We had goals around finance, life goals. We had goals around where we wanted to live. We wanted to be time rich, not necessarily owned by people or a mortgage and things like that.
Yep.
But in our own quirky way, we had a mission. And as a team, that's what I would say was the guiding force. So all the little blips along the way didn't really matter.
Well, this is interesting as well, because I think for people listening, if you're a developing player, understanding and having clarity about a vision and understanding your why behind the vision, and the why could be multiple things like you just spoke of, could be financial independence and being time rich, etc. It doesn't have to be a specific squash specific outcomes that you're aiming for. It could be that's part of it. It could be that I want to become world number one. I want to become world champion. But there are sometimes these larger driving forces in the background, which will give you that energy sometimes when you're flat or things like that. So I think for people listening, if you are along that journey, it's probably important to take a step back and look at the bigger picture beyond squash, and also try to figure out, what is actually driving me, because that's going to give you that sustainable energy and that momentum, that intrinsic motivation to keep you going. But do you agree, Laura? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's sort of the reason why isn't it behind the behaviors in a way? And that's very different for everybody. And, even personality wise, I know like Danny and I spoke a lot about my personality. We did a lot of work on the Enneagram when I was playing, and I figured out that I was a number 1 on the Enneagram, if anybody knows it or wants to look into it. And so when I found this out, I remember having a conversation with Danny saying, right, well, how do I change my number then? Don't want to be that. Don't want to be like that anymore. And he was like, well, you can't change your number. That's not how the Enneagram works. And that was almost the first step to, I would say, like one of the first steps to us really doing a little bit of mental work together. I mean, I would arguably say that Danny's help with my career was, of course, it was mental because we lived together and his input was there every single day. But in terms of the actual kind of mental work, I also worked with somebody else who was almost like a more experienced Danny. It was who trained Danny, and it worked better because of that, just because of the closeness of that relationship. He had the distance,
Yes.
and let's be honest, I probably needed to talk about Danny to him sometimes. And so that was phenomenal. But obviously even now, like Danny chipping away, like I said, very wise, always kind of helping with that side of things. I think ultimately it was helping me understand my personality and getting back to that. And I think that's what Danny is really good at with the players he works with now. And I think like just getting on to the next question that I wanted to ask, it was along those lines of, in terms of the game itself and the players that you work with mentally, from a coaching perspective, do you feel like knowing so much of the game is actually a help or a hindrance? Because, for example, the guy I said about working with, who taught Danny a lot of the stuff he knows, didn't really have a clue about squash. Obviously, he learned as he worked with me, but there was that separation there. He didn't know whether my drop shot was on or not, or if I was volleying or not, or whether I was able to hold the middle of the court or show different shots and all of that sort of stuff. But we of course know that a lot of that ties into the mental side. So Danny is so good. Just to round up my question, we'll be watching players and they'll do a behavior, whether it might be shout out loud, go too quiet. He'll see something in their body language and he'll go, uh-oh. And I'm like, what's happened? And he'll go, watch the next few rallies now. And I'd say 90% of the time it comes true. So something that you can see in the mental side, but it's also linked to the squash. So I just wondered if you thought that was how that's affected you, positively, negatively, probably both.
Yeah. Well, in the first instance, I think what playing a sport does to a decent level, where you've played it to a level where you've been able to feel like you've got the game under control, but then the day after you've played a different opponent or it's a different day, different conditions, different pressure, whatever, and you just can't get it under control. So I feel like when you've played, I remember a good story. I remember playing the over 40 nationals and playing absolutely superb. I was fit, everything was clicking. I just learned some new things. Got to the final, played an ex-professional in the semis, a good player, won that. Got to the final and I played a guy who just hit the ball so hard. I'm watching him from off the court and a bit of a bigger guy. I just thought, I'll be all right with this guy. He'd won a lot of things, but I thought, I'll be fine. And I just couldn't cope with the heat in the ball. Just as simple as that. Everything I wanted to do, I just couldn't. I think I got a game, but I got mullered in the end, and it was as basic as I couldn't deal with the bounce of the ball. And what was interesting, Nora Angola was coming through at the time, and Laura went and played her about 2 months after this had happened with me, and it was in Chicago, and she got battered off Goa. I mean, Laura went on and beat her a lot of times and lost to her. But especially at the end when Goa was coming up. But I remember just being like, I get it, because you just couldn't deal with the heat and the bounce. And it was in Chicago, a really bouncy day. It was like balloon. So that's one example. That's one story of, and then thinking, well, how would I adapt to that next time, and what would I do? But when you've played games like golf or things like that, you realize one small thing can, small things turn into big things. So when I'm watching a game, you might watch me playing a game watch me coaching a game, if he sat next to me, say I'm helping Salma or Olivia or something, or then Laura, and you'll think, God, he's supposed to be a psychologist and really cool. And actually, I'm like right in it. I think I used to be like a football coach like that, where you would have to get involved from the sidelines. So I'm right in it. I'm living it. It's just how I am. I'm feeling it. I'm not, I always shout for Laura as well, always get involved, which I think used to annoy a lot of people, which I can understand. And, and I have this sort of like straight after the match, I might have one or two takeaways, but I'm never angry at the player because I respect how hard sport actually is. Never mind my level, at their level at pro. I think what playing squash has done for me is, and getting beat off players as well, good players and playing pros, being good enough to be in there, win some points and rallies, but then just get beat with subtleties and things. It really made me aware of like, you can't understand that off court.
Yeah.
Look at that. What's going? Oh, I get it. So if I'm watching, say, Shabini playing some of the players, although I know the answers, like I might know the answers mentally, that doesn't mean the player can deal with it.
Right.
I see a lot of coaches, a lot of people, they get frustrated with players by thinking the players can do their ideas, but they can't. They are that player.
Right.
Not
And
only on the mental side, all the baggage and what might be going on in their life and how they are, but just even from a technical gameplay thing, you know. So if a player loses to someone a lot, I kind of go, but there's a reason why certain players might lose to players 20 times on the trot. And it ain't the brain. It's something going on in the squash. And I felt that personally. So in that respect, unless you change and grow and move on and really change what you're doing, and that's usually a big job, change coach, do something different, very rarely do you flip that result because the other player also knows they've got you.
yeah.
And if they've got a half decent coach, they know how to do you. And if you're a coach who just thinks, no, I have the answers, and it's the player's fault, they just didn't do what I said enough. You're just getting stuck.
Right. There's some
So it's
responsibility on the
helped me.
coach as well, right? Like there's responsibility on both the player and the coach to identify the opportunities, like you're saying, why am I getting beat? And then it's not just mental, to your point.
Yeah.
There could be a winning tactic, but if you don't have the requisite skills to execute the winning tactic, then you can know what the winning tactic is, but you're never going to go out and be able to do it, right?
And you need to be open-minded. So Sun Tzu, the Art of War, know your enemy. So you have to go and listen to other coaches and opponents, and they will tell you their secrets because they love, because a big thing in sport and squash, especially, status. So everybody wants to know and say, look what I know, which is fine. That's human. We all do that. So they can't help but tell you why they're beating you, generally. They let you know. So you listen to that and you're dead open and you can go, fair play, how would I possibly ever know it all?
Right.
Like I'm true and partial. I know things, but I've got massive blind spots.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me. So like, in a way, like, to be uncertain is it feels doubtful, it's a bit scary, but to be certain is absurd.
I like that.
There, basically that. It's to be certain is absurd. So what playing squash does yourself, or playing any sport, or getting coached, it reminds you when you still play as a psychologist or a coach or anything, or do anything in life, that you go out, you've got all your best intentions, you've got all it's all in your head. Definitely you're on your high horse. I've cracked the game, but the brain just goes, no, you haven't. Not today. You haven't got me. And all your theories fall down, and it's very makes you humble.
Right.
And I used to say that a lot to parents, when they were going mad at the kids and being on them. Oh, you bottled it, you did this. I don't know why. And they're coming in with logical explanations. I used to say, well, when was the last time you went and tried to play sport in front of your mum and dad
Right.
and you were having a bad day? How did that go?
Right.
Even now, if you did it and you're 40 years old, I bet you still wouldn't like your mum like that in your ear when you were forgot or doing, you would picking at you. So now, when you haven't played or done something under pressure for a long time yourself, you just sit there like you know everything.
Right.
And then you reminisce to these odd glory days you used to have. You cherry pick the odd win that you once had or used to do. And you go, when I played, I just used to listen to music and smile. Or when I played, I just used to put the ball on the wall all day and they couldn't get it. When I played, I just used to go to the track and get fit. And then to be fair, that comes not only is not helpful, it starts to be arrogant.
Mm.
Never mind being dumb, but it's arrogant. So in that way, playing squash and still trying to learn squash and keep playing, it kind of puts you off your pedestal a lot.
Right.
So you can still be certain. You can still say, no, come on, this is the tactic. I believe in it. Come on, I really think we're going to crack it and be like that. But if it doesn't quite work out, you can dead easily give credit to your opponent and hopefully learn as well what's going on as it goes on. Now, players find that hard to do because players can be very emotional. Sorry, that's the dog. Woody, sit down. Players can be very emotional and upset, and they just think that they're terrible when they've lost and amazing when they've won.
Right.
But then it's neither, but once they've calmed down and you've been able to talk them through it and so on, hopefully they can also start to talk with the coach about the moving target that the opponent is and
Mhm.
how the game's changing and so on. And then maybe the coach can say, I think we need some new ideas or we need some alternate opinions. And that's this open-mindedness that I think,
Right.
well, for me, playing squash, Laura, kind of didn't realize it at the time, but I think it had a massive impact on me, being having a lot of empathy for players.
Well, I think one of the really important themes that you're hitting upon here as well is this concept of having a beginner's mind, just being a lifelong student, open to everything that your experiences are trying to teach you, instead of thinking that you know everything or that there's one way. So I think that that malleability, the mental malleability, is critical. But I know this was great. Thank you, Danny. But there's one thing you mentioned earlier. We spoke about phases. And in Laura's career, did you see any specific phases of, growth as a human being and growth as a squash player? And are there phases that you could say are almost consistent, like themes that lots of people will go through
Yeah.
as they develop? Is there anything like that you've come across?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I think obviously, my mum summed it up great. Who used to watch from a distance, and she's quite a wise person as well in terms of sits back and just drops in little words here and there, and you're like, damn, like 10 years later, she was right, um, which is great because, she doesn't barrage you with it. But she said about Laura, she just said it was girl, young woman, woman.
Hmm.
And she saw, but Daniel, don't panic. She's still a girl, Laura.
Right.
Yeah, but we need to win tomorrow. I am panicking.
Yeah, and I'm also 25 and married and don't
Yeah,
really want to still be called a girl.
25. Yeah. And then you go through a next sort of phase, from
But
being
what does girl mean in the first
well,
place?
in
What does
terms
it
of my
mean?
mum, just a young girl, like you haven't experienced lots of life, you're growing up still. You in terms of your maturity and worldly understanding, you're not settled in yourself. Mum would say, when you're a young girl, you don't really know where you are. You're floundering a little bit. You're trying to grab on for certainty and an identity and all these things.
Right.
I think one of the key things from my perspective, feeling that, and the things that we discussed a lot early on in our relationship, and I don't know if this is applicable or helpful to people, but it was also a phase. And I think by the way, you can't bypass that stage. You have to earn the right of passage through girl to young woman to more mature woman, whatever. And I'm sure that's the same when it comes to men as well. But a big part of it for me was maturing away from my family in a good way. Especially as I met Danny, and we, I think what Danny's mum from a distance saw was me just kind of not really having the experience that I needed, and wasn't prepared to, go out a bit more on a limb. And you could see it in desperation. One of the stories I have in terms of that and that maturity was playing Camille Serme for the very first time in Monaco, or one of the first or second times. We knew she was going to be good. She was coming on. She's a few years younger than me. She nearly beat me. We were in the fifth game and she broke down in tears in the fifth game. She just literally could not control her emotions. Coach was there. She's always been very an emotional player, and that's for the good and the bad, even when she matured. But early on in her career, you saw it a lot because I was a little bit older. You saw it a lot with Raneem, you saw it a lot with Camille, even Shabini, Gohar, see it a little bit with Hania now, all of those little things where you can just see that they haven't got to that place where they're almost settled in their own skin a little bit, looking a little bit to outward things, I would say, to kind of make them complete rather than being complete from the inside out. And that a lot of that with squash players and athletes would be results. So that one thing, I think, when you look at the way that Shabini is now a mature woman, I would say, in comparison to when she first played me on tour, Gohar as well. And as players looking in, I can see a little bit more clearly the phases that these players are in, whether they're very young, very like maturing a little bit, or actually transitioning into mature women. And I don't know if Danny would agree with this. You sort of get that happy medium for a little while where you actually get the best of both, where you actually still physically and mentally ready to really push on with the game, squash being the game, and you're actually mature enough to do it well. And you're always trying to get that perfect bit, aren't you? Whereas when you're more of a young woman, you maybe your squash isn't quite complete yet, and you're trying to chase a little bit. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you've got to throw in as well, like individual personality types, and then you've got this maturity within the type. A player's always going to be they are the DNA, are they brought up, and then you've got culture coming in as a variable, but even within cultures there's different things. But what a person can do from within is always sort of work on how they're feeling and developing and maturing. And you can't really, you can't force that. For example, I think things such as traveling, moving out of home, getting married, big life events, definitely traveling around the world, being independent, spending time alone, these certain things, diary writing, reading books, things can sort of like get you a little bit more, to move that on. And I think the key one is the young woman to mature to woman, what I call that businesswoman on it. Someone who has that next level of dignity and respect and self-respect and so on. And again, it doesn't mean you become the most popular. It just, a lot of people can't move on from being like a girl and giggling and, and the other girls. It's a bit like the school playground thing, you have to keep, and then what I also call about being in first person all the time, speak a lot with Olivia about this, like people get stuck in first person. In other words, they're the central character of their life movie. It's all about them, me and how am I coming across and so on. I think kind of when you get over yourself and you get a sense of humor about yourself, but you almost release yourself to this next level of like, I can stick to this, but I don't have to get stuck to it. I can focus and go for it, but it doesn't own me. And it kind of frees you up, makes you dangerous.
Mm.
and there's always an aura I've seen of the very, very best players. They always have this aura of, I've got my own friends at home. I don't need you lot. Like, I've got loads of mates. I don't see enough anyway. You lot are my frenemies or business colleagues, and we're okay and we're fine. But like, and I need to, and you might always get one or two very close friends on tour or whatever, but generally it's like, right, I'm done. I'm off. See ya. I'm going to catch up with my friends at home, and
And
having
how
that
would you say that would
separation helps links in.
how would you say that kind of equates as well on the male side with some of the guys you've worked with, maybe on whether it be on the mental side, but have you seen the similar sort of phases along that sort of route with, is it mature male as well, and is it different in any way?
In a way, it is. It is. I think it is the same, and I think there are obviously gender differences a lot. But with the males, and again, depends on personality type and culture. But
I was going to
um,
say, Danny, for males, it almost feels like it would go from imbecile to less imbecile to minor moron. Yeah.
you said that,
Gonna go there.
yeah. I think with the males, I think what it is, it's responsibility more. It's like it's like getting the small things done first. Responsibility. Like, if everything stopped, I could hold a family together right now. Yeah. It's getting to that level of, if there was a funeral that had to happen and it was a crisis, you could
Never
count on
step
me
up.
straight away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm there. So, and then also again, it's regardless of type, because in terms of personality types, to not get too deep with it, but you've got kind of heart people, head people, and gut people. So you've got all these different kind of character, kind of types. Some people are more feely and relationshipy. Some people are just more mental and like a bit like Spock off Star Trek and that, and just a bit in the brain. And
Mhm.
some people just more gut instinct and life's easy. You just do this and action and strong and
Mm.
straight in. So we, within those types of differences, you can still have a general sense of someone who's mature, can get over themselves quick and sort of stand up and be counted
Mhm.
when they need to. So, you know, it's not about being serious. It's not about being like, I'm mature. It's about being who you are. It could be really, really fun. But when it comes down to it and you need to switch on, it's like, I'm fine. And also little things like you say, less imbecile, like, you don't need to be good, cheating on people. You don't need to be lying. I think lying, when you sense people I see still lying and never telling quite the whole truth and ducking and diving, not answering, like that saying, it's impossible not to communicate. You're always communicating. So when you don't bring any but someone back, you're communicating. You're not my priority.
Mm.
When you say, did you read that thing I sent you? Have you done that? Oh, what it was, mate. They're communicating, so I think with men, it's like, do you get done what needs to get done, but you don't get all serious about it. You just do it and then you move on.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, first things first, bang. But saying that as well, Harhad, we also have all these different lines of development as well. So you could be very mature in the squash sense and
Mhm.
sport business, but absolutely pathetic at home as
Right.
a father or as a friend or with a lady, like as in your relationship. You could treat them terribly, but be
Right.
world number one at squash or something like that, or two. So you get these different. You not only get types, you get these lines of development as well.
Right.
Uh, and that's what I try. I find it a lot harder with the men to get through on that if
Mm.
they're not already there. But with the girls, generally I've found who stick it through, it takes a long, long, long time to help. But eventually, the girls who I've worked with, I think they will all say I've helped them immensely in terms of that kind of confidence to grow up and keep their energy. A
Right.
lot a lot of my players have left the game or gone on, or they still play, and they play whole seasons and they keep their energy going. Olivia's a prime example. Salma's done well this year as well and stuff. And so that's, and Laura, obviously, you know, that's been a real sort of thing I'm very proud of.
I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, you've said so many things. One of them is that I'm lacking in many of those lines you just spoke of. But hey, beginners mindset, growth mindset, you're always, it's not that you're lacking in it, it's that you're aware of the fact that you have some work to do. And I think life would be boring without something to actually work upon, to be honest. So Laura,
I think when you,
something to say.
I think it might be interesting for people who are listening who maybe don't know how you work as well, to maybe just go upon like how do you develop and help people develop those lines. I mean, from the outside, I think I've seen certain players come. You've always said to me, it's for the majority of the players that you've helped the most, they come to you. They have to come to you. They almost have to go, please, can you help me? Because it's a very important part that they believe that they can be helped and want to be helped. And the minute that you go to a player and go, I think I could help you, they are almost like, well, go on then, make me better. And we know, as we know, whether that be squash coaching, mental work, anything in life, you really have to be the one that wants to be helped. And I think, you know, just for people listening, I think it's fair to say that's one of the reasons that you don't kind of put yourself out there in the marketing so much. You just kind of under the radar. You always say, you think Mark Campbell said the same on one of our previous podcasts, very much in the background. The player should be at the forefront, maybe the coach. But I hear, you know, a few conversations, obviously privy to the work that you do with the players that I work with on the squash side, know what obviously you did with myself. How do you go about working with some of the best players? And you obviously said it's not a quick fix. It's not like come to me and you'll win the tournament the next week necessarily. It's the ones that buy in for the long term. And how does that work? How do you get them to buy in? How do you get them to see the long-term picture? How do you work on all those different lines that you were talking about that are away from the squash, when they're like, just get the squash bit better, I don't care about the rest?
I think and it's not for everybody, you know. So, you know, there are, well, I mean, there must be hundreds and hundreds of psychological therapies and approaches, from spiritual approaches, behavioral approaches, psychology, you know, whatever, psychotherapy. Just so many ways you can talk and help people, so many philosophies, positive psychology, negative, you know, absurdities. You could go on and on, and I could bring a toolkit up here of so many theories of how to help. But the basic thing I believe in, and I think you get this from teaching, because I've held a teaching job, you know, since 1997. So I've always been employed as a teacher primarily, although they call it a lecturer. And I think when you have a group of people in front of you, like all the time, and you always meet your new groups in September and and you kind of know you're only as good as you sort of, in a way, in terms of your effectiveness, you know, the meaning of your communication is the response you get back. So it's not how much you can throw out. So you learn how, with a group, how to pace yourself when there's people in the group want complexity and some people want simplicity. And if you understand personality types and you get a bit of rapport with a player and they're prepared to give it time, you get a knack over the years of how to pitch it at the right time. So for example, someone like Jonathan Kemp, who I helped a lot back in the day, who was a great player, he's the head of New Zealand squash now, coaching. John was a very brainy guy, and he just, you know, great chess player, very brain thinker. So he loved the intellectual side of it. He just wanted it loads, and that's how I got rapport and care and trust with him. Whereas, say, someone like Marwan, who I worked with for a long, long time, he couldn't do that. He just wanted the relationship being strong. He wanted to know I was there for him and just to care, because he's more of a heart person, believe it or not, contrary to what people might think. You know, when he plays, he's a heart person, where his brother's probably more of a gut person in terms of just let's have it, you know, in his peak. So you know, to treat the way you try and talk to Nick, Matthew, or Mohammed in that way, very different than what the things you go about with Marwan. So you've got to kind of work out, but it just comes down to trust, care. And when I say trust, that, you know, they know that what they tell you is never going anywhere. And also, I believe deep down, they know you're not doing it so you can get more clicks and business off them. And I've never asked for a logo or write an article for me or a promotion, tell everybody how good I am because I need to get more money from the amateurs or whatever and juniors. That's not my style. That's just not what I've needed. As I said, I'm fortunate to do that because I am my situation. I'm not, if anyone else has to do it their way, as I said, there's hundreds and hundreds of different ways and people do it in millions of different ways. Good for them. But for me, trying to be authentic to what I believe in, that's how I am. And I think that that's paid off in the long run. When I write down the list of players I've worked with and some of the, and privately, and it's a long, long, long list now after almost 22 years. There isn't one. I mean, I've made massive mistakes. There's things I think, God, I can't believe I did that or said that. And the players probably think the same, although we'd never probably talk again or whatever I'd say about that bit. And, who is perfect? Like I say, you can't be so clever, you're completely wrong. You can't be so clever, you're completely right. So, you must be, you're always in partially right and partially wrong in a way. So you're trying your best, but they could probably not argue with the fact that I cared for them. I've never betrayed anyone's trust. And also, I think the key thing is when you work with someone straight away, you want a quick win straight off the bat. You want to do something in the first match. They go, shit, that was amazing. You like, and all obviously their brain extrapolates to, and you're like, whoa. And, it's like, that would happen with Olivia. The first time I ever worked with Olivia, I said, right, okay, I know you get this and you get that, but, you get a bit nervous, but when it gets to the end, but just keep saying to yourself, refuse to lose. Just keep saying that in your head because it'll distract you anyway. And it's about attentional control and all that. And I think that's the thing. I've got to come up with things that the underlying theories or whatever believe. It's no good explaining the theories. That you've got to give them a thing they can do that they just can do and it's done. So I said, refuse to lose. Just keep saying it. Okay, good luck. And she was playing a friend actually, the French girl. And she plays this match, and they have about 3 match balls each. It was crazy. And Olivia wins it. She comes off, and they go, "Hi, Olivia." They say, Mike said, "Hey, Olivia, well done there today. You're from America. Well done. You've come to France." She said, "Yeah." She went, "I've just started working with Danny Massaro," and he said, "Refuse to lose." That's why I won. It's amazing. And, that was like 6 years ago. And from that moment, because of that, I think it just built and built and built. She just thought, this guy works. And
well, it was almost a similar sort of thing with Hania, wasn't it? We had that first chat. No one knew we were working together. We did a really basic session on arousal level, and she went and won Qatar, beat Shabini 11-8 in the fifth or something. And she's like, no one knew we were working together. She was gutted. She couldn't thank me in the speech after because she hadn't told everybody. And then she's like, you just get that buy-in straight away because it was something quite simple that worked. For her, it was like she'd gone from losing second round in Paris the 2 weeks before to having 2-3 chats with me. We'd done nothing in terms of the squash, and she wins the Qatar Classic, which she was always capable of, but it was just interesting. But I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that actually, just going back to the question, it was a bit like it's conversational. A lot of it, it's talking. It's like getting out the chats. It's building up that trust, isn't it, that people can tell you a little bit of their fears. I mean, we had loads of those chats where we'd be on a plane or we'd be driving somewhere and I'd be nervous, or I'd say to you, even just little things for me, it's such an expense having you travel on tour with me. We've got an extra flight, not an extra hotel, got food, you losing out on a week's wages traveling with me. It's cost us $2,000 and I've not earned a penny yet. And it's just, it was pressure and talking about those worries and fears and you helping me kind of work through a lot of them stuff. And then I think obviously we know it just paid for itself. It was that, and then on the back of matches winning or particularly losing, it was like, right, you lost because of that. I think it's fair to say that what you see when you're in person, I know this from watching Hania recently, like what I see on Squash TV is so much different to what you see when you're actually there live watching it. Which is why I always want to encourage players of all levels to actually go and watch their opponents in person. I'm so lazy because of Squash TV and YouTube now to not do that. And what you see is so different. But also, I guess it kind of goes back to one of the questions we asked earlier about that. Like, is it positive or is it negative that you know so much about squash? Because you are quite pragmatic. You can be quite harsh at times in the best possible way, where he'll say, you know, in a bit of a debrief of like watching one of our players play, or particularly one of the players he works with, goes off on a bit of a rant that no one ever sees. And he's like, right, I'm going to text them this. And I'm like, just give it 10 minutes. Hold on, they're not me. They don't know that you love them to bits. And it's like, just hold on and let them calm down and don't be too harsh with it and stuff. And that, I think it's a positive and a negative in that way of like, you know, straight away, like we are. And I think it's fair to say one of the reasons we kind of really worked as well is that we're both winners in our own way. It's like the objective of this is to win.
Yeah.
And if you're not winning, whether it's because of mental, physical, technical, tactical, we fix it, and we fix it now because we are not having that again. And a lot of players, even with myself, it's been really interesting working with the players that I've worked with over the years. Like I want to get straight on the phone after a loss, particularly a loss, and go, right, what happened there? Because that's when you learn right there.
Right.
Whereas a lot of players want to disappear for literally a week and they don't want to talk to you. They want to stick their head in the sand and they go, I don't want to look over there. Don't shine a light on it. And I think Danny and I together are like the world's worst pair for like just getting the biggest flashlight you've ever seen and going, there's that corner you don't want to look at. And unless you're going to fix that, it's going to keep on happening.
Right. I'd agree.
And I think that can actually be a bit too much for some people too. Like you probably understand that I had where it's probably where that fit of like whether you coached off me or worked with Danny is, it's not always a perfect fit, is it? For that reason, not a lot of people can actually handle that honesty and actually are worth, what's the word, like trusting in that, like having that kind of feeling like you've been punched in the stomach to be like, I'm not having that feeling again.
Yeah, I think oftentimes, as long as you know that the person genuinely cares about you, I think it's easier to stomach things. I remember I was working with this old school English coach close to 10 years ago now. And the first time we trained, he was like, you can't hit a ball for the life of you. Like, give me 20 push-ups. I was like, you're down on the ground. Just give me 20 push-ups. I'd get up. And then he's like, you call that a shot? That's pathetic. Give me 20 more push-ups. I was like, give me 20 push-ups. And I'm just like, what is going on here? But at the end of the day, because I was open-minded to his feedback, and I knew that, I'm here to learn, and different people have different perspectives. If you're coming in as a student, then you will take what the other person is giving you. Now, whether their delivery or their approach is maybe not ideal, that's to be debated later. But if they're actually giving you something valuable, I think that it's probably smart to listen to what other people have to say. Now, you can question the value of it at some point as well, obviously, because an amateur might give you some feedback which is completely ridiculous. But at least it gives you something to think about. I remember, I think I read about this once, and I think, Laura, you mentioned this recently too, like Peter Nicol would just speak to random people at the club and get feedback on his game. And every now and then he would pick up a gem from it, but he had enough knowledge and wisdom to be able to distill the feedback as to make no sense, that's a good one, let me apply it. So I think having, kind of going back to a bit of what Danny was saying as well about that instinct, that gut, trusting your gut, having some knowledge, understanding of squash, understanding of your personality, when you put those things together, then you can actually be intelligent and strategic about the path forward. Okay, this is awesome. I did have a question. I know people are going to be wondering, like, okay, Danny, you're a mental coach. We've spoken about a whole host of things, and a lot of people that are head people, like you said, in the brain, you're going to say, well, Danny, what the heck am I supposed to do? What is a mental program? What is mental training? How can I go about doing that? I know there's no simple answer, obviously, because it depends on the person, what you're trying to work on, what you're trying to achieve, personality, etc. But are there certain common traits or themes, things that you would discuss with people in a quote unquote mental training program?
Yeah, I think it's the one that would come up over and over again that they wouldn't quite understand, that they would say it in other ways. Oh, I can't beat this player. Oh, I was playing well in practice, then I couldn't do my shots. I couldn't stick to the tactic even though it was working. The referee put me off. You know what I mean? All these genuine, things, and I don't believe I could win. I should have, blah blah. In a really simple way, it's just attentional control. So it's like, people always, it's that saying, people think that they experience a life that they live, but they don't. They experience the life they focus on. So you take part in the world, you make it up. So your perceptive systems, there are obviously truths out there, but you're always perceiving, you're partly making up. We all look at the same picture, we see a different thing. And you, in a way, never look at the same picture twice, because you're always a different person as well.
Right.
So you're always joining the world with your perception halfway. So what that really is, it's attention. You've got to be very, very careful where you place your attention and how you use your attention as well. So you can use your attention in a very single-minded way, such as I'm on the hunt, like I'm focused on that. But you can also use your attention in a very broad way, such as when you are on the hunt, are you also attending to the fact that no one's going to take you out?
Right.
Which is your two hemispheres of the brain, really, the left and the right hemisphere. So when it comes down to squash and playing a match or sport, the most basic one across all things is I was attending to this, and then my brain started attending to things it didn't really need to, or the wrong things, or I couldn't see, and I got attacked, and I wasn't ready, or I went off the rails. Whether that's nerves, feeling judged, daydreaming, not focusing on an internal thing, getting too technical, too broad inside. Oh, I'm thinking of all my swing and this and that. It's basically your attention's gone wrong. And I spend a lot of time trying to just teach, usually in the first bits, because some players don't really need that. Who are very good players. They're just sort of amazing players. They just might need it a bit. But some of the lower players, and definitely the amateur players, and juniors, you just try and say to them, like, get them to notice where their brain's at. Are they thinking about themselves inside? Are they putting their attention out there?
Right.
Are they on one thing, narrow, or are they broad? And it's an old, easily simple way of attentional model by Robert Nidifer from the 70s, but it's a very simple way, and it's just where your attention goes, your energy flows. You can practice that and practice it and practice it and practice it, and it never gets boring. It's very important that you get good at that. I've had some great results with that, particularly with players that are like 500 in the world going up to 200 or 100 and things like that. So like I say, I don't do it so much with juniors, because I think juniors need to try and work that kind of stuff out in with themselves and get their natural way of attending to things in a match. And then if it gets a bit more serious, you might help them. Or a coach could mention that, or a parent maybe, but not a psychologist. I don't think personally we need to psychologize junior play. But yeah, essentially that's the one. It's attention.
I love it. I mean, there's such a big trend over the last several years anyways about mindfulness, for instance, and just practicing. In my mind, I see mindfulness as a practice of attention. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, it's one of them. I mean, you could use. I could again. I always think of sports psychology as having a toolkit and just 100 tools in it. You could do mantra, visualization. You could do copying. Where you pretend you're another player, and that kind of thing. You can do all that. You can do mindfulness, presence work, spiritual work, whatever you do. You can do things that basically all they really are is putting your attention to something or not.
Yep.
Where your attention goes, anxiety control, blah blah blah, and mental imagery. There's all these things. I think the thing that comes up though outside of the court is the thing where I have a lot of impact in terms of psychology. This is strange. That's performance psychology in the match. I thought Ali Farag mentioned this really well. We worked with Mike Way or something, and now he treats like there's life level, there's squash level, and then there's sort of like performance level or something, or winning level, such whatever. But yeah, outside of that, I really believe in energy. I really believe in it's how you manage your energy on the day of the game, around the tournament, when you're at work. If you think about you're an amateur player, you've got a job, you've got a family, you've got bills, sleep. How you manage your sense of energy, like rather than being that tired but wired energy, where you're like, I'm so knackered, but I'm on it. I'm at 6 a.m. at the gym. I'm looking at my heart rate there, and everything's measured, and you're sort of forced to get through it. Oh, to me, that's a very low energy state. What a high energy state is when you can relax and you can find time to take breaks, and so you're not putting a plaster on it. You're not chaos, and then right 10 minutes of mindfulness, microwave spirituality. Oh yeah, brilliant. You basically it's the modern thing of speed up, achieve, speed up, get that done, be super coach, super player, super parent, super brother, super neighbor, super worker, boom, 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 boom. And it's like, my word, then the food goes down, the rest goes down, the sleep goes down. So I think we can all learn about that rather than thinking of always fitness, thinking of health and energy. And how can you manufacture your week and set it up so where you can get these come downs is slower? Can you slow down the pace of what you're doing? How important is all these things? Spinning all these, and again, flipping it to the professionals,
right?
That is massive in terms of dealing with 12, 13, 14 tournaments a year, flights, air miles, airport, loneliness, missing your family, strange hotel rooms, blah blah, and so on. So without your cells being vibrant, what are we? Energy drives everything. So that again, and I think the coach is very important in that. A coach saying, take a rest. With the horses, the horse trainers, they send them into the fields. It ain't going to run for us if it's not feeling it. Now, I know a human can overcome it mentally and push, and sometimes you do have to push because it's hard, and I'm not saying you're terrible if you are, but if you're talking about improvement and you genuinely want to set yourself up better, sorting out issues with your family, how you're sleeping, your living accommodation, your finances, all these things can unlock, and time and how busy you are, that can just unlock that natural zest. Well, your psychology and your body just goes into a good place anyway. Yeah. You're excited. You have enough energy to be excited. You have enough energy to be awake and notice how good your life is.
Yeah.
Not just there going, shit, but, I've won, shit, I've got to go and win next week now, or everyone will think that was a bad win. I've lost again. I've got to win so energy is huge, and that is the hardest thing to get people to understand in the modern life.
Yeah, I think there's just so much modern culture is so fast paced. It's become so much about achievement, especially in the West. And I think those things are driving people.
Well, in sport, that was what my PhD was a lot around as well. It's like why it's hard for pros to be well.
Right.
It's also everything's analyzed. You can't sleep now without people. I mean, it's so glad it wasn't around when Laura was playing. You know, like calories. Oh look, like, how did you sleep? Yeah, I'm all right. Well, why? No, I haven't looked at my watch yet.
Yeah.
How did you run? How did you everything? And everyone, you know, and then you've got the social media side, you know. So attention is a massive currency nowadays, isn't it? Without knowing it, you're a story seller,
Yeah.
not just a storyteller. You have to sell you all the time. That takes so much energy. So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with social media and do whatever you like, but just understand that there's a cost to it.
Yeah.
This is what I talk with Laura. Like when you go diving into things, there's a huge energy cost that you're not always aware of because you're getting further and further away from time rich and being peaceful and actually being able to contemplate and go, you know what, life's pretty good. So the only time it happens is when athletes get injured and they go, oh my God, 6 months out, best thing I ever did. And you're like, no shit, you know,
Yeah.
like you're just like that since you've been 10, you know, and or like COVID was a time where people got to kind of, you know, and then obviously relax. And I think this is one of the things why athletes struggle as well when they retire. It's why it's hard for pros.
Yeah.
They're going at such a velocity in their life, training, rest. I'm even doing rest. I'm relaxing. I'm doing my headspace.
Yes.
Everything's like mapped out.
Yeah.
Spontaneity's gone. Creativity goes. It's all like that. It's on it, on it, on it. And obviously, you see this with football. You see it in many sports. The tennis players are saying the same. So all this stuff about well-being, they're sort of putting a plaster on. The actual problem is you're all just going too fast. Like, and they're like, no, I'm not. I'm fine. That's fine. Just give me something to do quick. You know, give me a magic drink, give me a tablet, give me a bar or something, and or give me a sleep pill or some new melatonin thing, and I'll be fine. And that's one of the hardest things, and to get people to understand that. And sleep takes so much energy to sleep well. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I didn't sleep well. I can't sleep. I can't." And you're like, "Yeah, because you're wired. You don't know how to relax." Yeah, it takes a lot of energy to sleep. You know, also these little things, you know, that they are things that, you know, I have a lot of empathy for. I'm not saying the world's terrible. I'm not one of these doomers or anything. I'm just something I notice. And again, when you work with me or I try and help people, these are the sort of things, and that's where it sometimes gets a bit unstuck because I when they have to kind of make these instead of fine tuning and quick things that they want me for sometimes. Oh, just give me this, just give me that, give me a quick thing, all right? Give me a model, when I actually need them to go into their life and really, really refine things and systemic change of things, proper change, like you hear of people like, you know, who've moved away and they've changed coaches and they've changed their lifestyle. That that's proper courage and commitment, not just always looking for a small fine tweak, you know. And that to me is another big sign of you know, psychology. It's a little bit philosophical, but essentially it's just energy, you know, how you save and build energy.
Okay. Well, Danny, I think that's a good spot. You've shared a ton of information with all of us. I think it's beyond information actually. It's a different way of thinking and a different way of approaching many
Yeah.
aspects of life, in fact. So I think anyone that's listening, try the last piece you mentioned there. It's not just about the model or the tool or whatever. There's a lot more beyond that. And I think if there's one thing, and Laura, chime in as well, if there's one thing that I think I would love for people to take from this is exactly what you ended with right now. What do you think, Laura? What stood out to you right now?
I mean, it's difficult because I've heard it over the years and
Mm,
obviously tried to implement it so much myself. But
mm,
yeah, I think it's just that there isn't really a quick fix. It takes time. It takes probably the biggest thing that I see Danny working with players is a little bit like maybe like thinking about the human being itself being a bit of an onion, and the layers have to come off and you have to see what's underneath the surface and you have to grow. And then I think if you can buy into that and almost be prepared to peel back the layers of armor in a way that you've created over the years and get to the middle and the core of who you are and be vulnerable and let someone kind of then build the onion back out again in a way, is where you get your biggest results. The people who just keep the armor on and go, it's just not going well, I'll get there in the end, I'll just keep working harder, I'll just keep looking over there when I should be looking over there. And, you know, personally, like obviously with even the players I'm working with on the squash side, we ultimately come up against blocks with the coaching where I go, you kind of need to speak to Danny about that, because while I can talk to you about it, and I think the female on female thing with the coach is very important, I don't really know how to help you with that. It's beyond my technical, tactical side, even the mental side that I know you need a little bit of help there to peel that onion back. And a lot of people feel very vulnerable with that peeling back of the onion, but once they do actually get there, they are almost liberated in a way and then free. So yeah, that was probably a bit of a long-winded answer, but that's sort of how I feel like it goes.
Very last thing I'd say, very simply, you have to get people to feel motivated by, they visualize they're going towards something great and beautiful. I'm going to something better. It's almost like I can see it, I can feel it. You're right, and it's pulling me to it. That takes a lot of courage and responsibility and openness, but it's so nice. Whereas a lot of people, in a strange way, they're just trying to get away from crap.
Yeah.
Like, let me do this and this and this, so I can not be that bad, or I'll miss the tin, or I won't lose to them, or I'll just get. I think if you, in your own way, can set the vision and have people around you that can make you believe the place you know you're going to. Not like, not you know, if you're 500 in the world to world number one, or me being the champion boxer ever, which never in a million years, you know, but yeah, a realistic kind of improved place where you want to go and it's beautiful. It almost, the future pulls you to it rather than you always having to design it forward and get away from this problem. And that is immense. That's, talk about energy. That is a game changer when you can, most of your days, you feel like that.
Thanks for listening to Between the Lines, where world-class insight fuels the squash journey that never ends. If today's episode helped you grow, please share it with someone in your squash circle and join our community online. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and stay in the rally.